Do you know someone like this? Someone who feels completely at ease when they're told what to do. But the moment they have to make their own decision, they spiral into anxiety. This isn't just a personality quirk. This is something much deeper. And today, we're going to get into the psychology behind why some people actually feel safer when someone else is in control. Now, the most striking example of this comes from one of the darkest chapters in human history. World War II, Nazi Germany. Adolf Eichmann was one of the key architects of the Holocaust. But here's what's fascinating. When he stood trial, he didn't look like a monster. He looked like a middle manager. The philosopher Hannah Arendt watched that trial, and what she saw shook her to the core. She coined the phrase, the banality of evil. Eichmann wasn't a fanatic. He wasn't driven by hatred. He was just following orders. He found psychological comfort in obedience. He didn't have to think. He didn't have to judge. He just had to execute the instructions handed down from above. And when asked about it, he said, "I was just following orders." That sentence is chilling, but it reveals something profound about human psychology. When you're inside a chain of command, you get to offload the burden of moral responsibility. You hand the decision upward. And in return, you get something your brain craves: peace. But here's the thing. Why does our brain work this way in the first place? The key is the relationship between giving up control and reducing anxiety. Here's what's happening inside your head. The human brain is wired to hate uncertainty. When the future feels unpredictable, your amygdala fires up, cortisol floods your system, your whole body goes into high alert. But the moment someone steps in with clear rules and clear instructions, your brain exhales. It's like being lost at sea in a storm and suddenly spotting a lighthouse. Instant relief. Now stay with me, because here's where it gets complicated. That lighthouse might not be real. Researchers ran an experiment where they gave participants a set of complex problems to solve. One group worked on their own. The other group received detailed, step-by-step instructions from a researcher. The result? The group that followed instructions reported significantly lower anxiety. But then they raised the difficulty. And this is where it gets wild. The self-directed group adapted. The instruction-following group completely fell apart. Short-term comfort had created long-term fragility. So how does this pattern form in the first place? Most of the time, the seeds are planted in childhood. Psychologist John Bowlby developed what we now call attachment theory. The idea that children need consistent, responsive caregiving to develop a secure sense of self. But when a child grows up under a hyper-controlling parent, something gets disrupted. They learn not to trust their own instincts. "Don't do that, I said so. Just do what you're told." Those phrases, repeated over years, wire the brain to look outward for guidance, rather than inward. And by the time that child becomes an adult, they're still doing it, over-relying on a boss's approval, needing someone else to validate their choices. It's not just that they're obedient, it's that they never learned how to be the author of their own decisions. Think about a bird that's spent its whole life in a cage. When the door finally opens, it doesn't fly, it just sits there, because freedom feels more terrifying than the cage. Now, let's go even deeper. Because what's happening in the brain during power dynamics is genuinely fascinating. In 2017, a research team studied what happens neurologically when one person takes on the role of the authority and another takes on the role of the follower. Every time the follower obeyed an instruction, their brain released dopamine. Dopamine, the reward chemical, the feel-good signal, which means the act of obeying is literally chemically rewarding. And here's the scary part. That's the same structure as addiction. The more you comply, the better you feel. The better you feel, the more you want to comply. And when you resist or push back, anxiety, guilt, discomfort, your brain learns the lesson fast. Obedience equals relief. Resistance equals pain. So it keeps choosing obedience. And this isn't just happening in extreme situations. This is happening to you right now. Think about your social media feed. You didn't choose what's on it. An algorithm did. You feel like you're browsing freely, but you're being guided by an invisible hand. Netflix auto plays the next episode, so you never have to decide whether to keep watching. That tiny convenience? It's quietly eroding your ability to choose. Psychologist Barry Schwartz called it the paradox of choice. When there are too many options, we freeze. We become overwhelmed. So some people stop choosing altogether. They hand the wheel to whoever or whatever seems most confident. A system, an authority, an algorithm, and the cost is invisible until it's not. Here's the most unsettling part of all this. It's not just individuals. Organizations and entire societies run on this mechanism. You've probably heard of the Milgram experiment. Stanley Milgram wanted to understand how ordinary people could participate in atrocities, so he set up a simple test. Participants were told to administer electric shocks to another person. Every time they answered a question wrong, the shocks increased in intensity with every wrong answer. 65% of participants went all the way to the maximum voltage. Let that sink in for a second. These were everyday people. They were clearly uncomfortable. Some were visibly distressed. But when the researcher said, "Please continue, you must go on," most of them did. Why? Because the moment an authority figure says, "I'll take responsibility," your brain's moral judgment goes offline. The weight of the decision lifts from your shoulders. And all that's left is the instruction. You see this everywhere in daily life. The employee who knows their boss is wrong, but nods and says, "Got it," anyway. The person who disagrees with every rule, but follows every single one of them. That tension between knowing better and complying anyway. That's the psychology of submission playing out in real time. Now, to be fair, compliance isn't always a bad thing. In the right context, following clear authority can be life-saving. In the military, a clear chain of command increases a unit's chance of survival. On a surgical team, everyone has a role and no one improvises. Athletes defer to coaches not because they're weak, but because coordinated strategy beats individual instinct. The problem isn't compliance. The problem is when it becomes the only mode you know. The employee who spends years reading their manager's mood, perfecting the art of saying the right thing at the right time, gets promoted. Now they're in charge, and they freeze, because they mastered how to follow. Nobody taught them how to lead. So what do you do with all of this? The truth is, real freedom is uncomfortable. Making your own decisions means sitting with uncertainty. It means owning the outcome whether it goes well or not. It means resisting the pull of whoever offers the easiest answer. That's genuinely hard, and your brain will fight you on it every step of the way. But here's what I want you to take from this. Every time you feel the urge to hand your decision to someone else, pause. Not because authority is always wrong, but because the more you outsource your choices, the smaller your world gets. And the smaller your world gets, the harder it becomes to ever step outside of it. The cage doesn't have to have bars. Sometimes it's just a habit. So ask yourself this: are you choosing your life? Or is someone or something choosing it for you? Because in the end, the most radical act of self-respect isn't rebellion, it's simply learning to trust your own voice again.